Melinda Gates reminds us a woman who has found her voice is by definition a strong woman. The search to find that voice can be remarkably difficult. True that, Melinda. P.S. If you're listening, those of us who grew up invisible in one of those childhoods, well, the search to find that voice can often seem like climbing Mount Everest on roller skates with one foot on a banana peel, which is why I recommend making small, regular deposits in your speak up in your everyday life. Find your voice, value your voice bank account. How small? Let me share with you how small my first 3 steps were in finding my voice. My first speech, January 2017, New Year's Eve, I'll never forget it. I'm hunched over the computer, champagne glass in one hand, computer in the other, cozy in my comforter in bed. I know how to live New Year's Eve. I had never heard of Brene Brown. I know, it's a shunned up, but I didn't. I was enrolled in a public speaking class. Everybody was ranting and raving how bad she was. So I listened to every single video she ever made that night, binging. She rocked my world. Literally rocked my world. One sentence in particular stuck in my brain. She says, Brene, if you're not in the arena with you, getting your butt kicked, not in the arena with her, getting your butt kicked like she is, she doesn't want to know from you. Well, I desperately wanted to know from her. No more sideline Sally. I made a resolution, a New Year's resolution. I was going to give my first speech the next day. I didn't know how or where or how. I made some vague prayer to the universe. Help, help, help. The next morning, I climbed up to Cathedral Rock for inspiration. Chapel of the Holy Cross, magnificent place. I was so overcome by my desire to connect, maybe a little bit influenced by my desire to impress Brene. I gave my first speech. I stuck out my hand, looked a stranger squarely in the eyes, and said, Happy New Year! That's it. 3 words. That was my first speech. I'm fairly certain, though, when I do run into Brene, she'll give me a pass on that one. I had entered the arena that day. You see, I don't think it's how many words we say. It's how deep our desire is to connect. Then giving that desire to connect our voice. My first real stage or speech on stage wasn't an official event. I was heartsick, really, crying my little eyes out in my room for all the events, snot on computer, that I got rejected from. I decided I didn't need permission to begin public speaking. I might never get that permission. So I created my own event, 18 minutes of your time for a glass of wine. I believe we have enough crayons in our crayon box to color outside the lines, to draw our own stage. That's what I did. My own stage was my backyard. I invited my dear friend's spiritual group to my talk, practiced my little TEDx speech for 18 minutes. Then we ate cheese and drank wine. It was glorious. I highly recommend it. My first speech for injustice wasn't for the world's water crisis. It was for yours truly in my gym. Had it up to here with the guy who kept the fan on. Even though it was freezing cold, I was freezing my kishkas off. I demanded a group vote. I lost. It still felt fantastic. When you speak up and you're used to zipping it, it feels amazing. I only have 2 questions of you, my dear audience. One of you, one of silence. But the last question I ask you, it's the whole enchilada. If you take one thing, just remember one thing from my speech tonight. It's the answer to this question. Are you willing? Are you willing to leave this earth giving silence the final word? If not, are you willing to join me here on stage? Give a speech. It doesn't have to be a TEDx talk. I'm not recommending you leap onto the TEDx stage tomorrow. You might fall on your kishka. Besides, I firmly believe, the path to finding your voice on stage begins with the path to finding your voice in your everyday life. You can start with the 3 small steps I gave any woman to begin speaking up anytime, anywhere. The key, the core, the secret to finding your voice in your everyday life begins with your willingness to replace one habit with the other. Which is why I must ask you, my dear audience, are you willing? Are you willing to replace the habit of stifling your voice, suppressing your ideas, swallowing all that energy with the habit of speaking up? It doesn't happen overnight. It takes time. It takes attention. It takes awareness. So I need you to ask yourselves a question. Every time you find yourself zipping it, swallowing your words, I want you to ask yourself, is this really what I want to do in this situation? Or am I just falling back on an old habit I've yet to outgrow? You know the answer to that question. Then, when you're used to speaking up in your everyday life, I want you to join me here on stage. The world needs to hear your voice, to lend your voice to a source of suffering that cannot speak for itself.